Hi guys, welcome back aboard a super messy Athena for yet more DIY fun. It's not supposed to rain today, or at least only one of the 4 forecast models promises a little bit of rain, so I want to take advantage of that and install the tracks for the head sail and also prep for the installation of the new Windlass. If I can just get the holes for this thing drilled and sealed today, then even though it's going to be raining a little bit later in the week, we can still install this because the core in the deck will be nice and protected. And then when the rain gets too bad, we can move inside and install this guy. This is a 24 volt, 180 amp high output alternator that we're going to bolt onto the engine. I'll do that using this very red and custom made pulley kit. That setup is going to be one of 4 ways we can charge our 7.8 kilowatt hour lithium bank. As you can see right now, it's in the process of top balancing, but we'll get back to that a little bit later in the video. Also, it would be really nice to finish the shower pan from last week's video. The fiberglass I'm waiting for is supposed to show up in a couple of days. I also want to get the last little fillets put in so that the head is ready for primer. If you're new to my channel, I have spent the last 5 years on a somewhat extensive refit here aboard Athena, doing pretty much anything you could imagine doing to a sailboat in terms of repairs, fixes, and improvements. All of that is documented right here on YouTube. It's been a lot of work, but in about 2.5 months, my fiance Ava and I are going to untie the lines and start the long journey to bring Athena from Europe to the US. I hope this thing will see a lot of use on that journey to save a little bit on marina fees. It's Athena's new Windlass. It's made by Lowfriends. It's their Tigris model. This is the 24 volt, 1500 watt version. Hello, it is I, Mess from the future. I'm in the process of editing this week's video, and I just realized that I'm probably butchering the model name of the Windlass. I think it's more likely that it's Tigris and not Tigris. I'm going to be saying Tigris a lot, so apologies for that. Let's resume the video. And it's a little bit of a chunky monkey in terms of weight. This thing is looking pretty spiffy and shiny right out of the box. I'm sure we'll get it dinged up in no time though. When it comes to choosing a windlass, regardless of how you're going to power it, if it's manual, electric, or hydraulic, there are 2 types. There are horizontal ones and vertical ones. That refers to the orientation of the gypsy, the thing that's right here that kind of grabs onto the chain. This is a horizontal version, and yes, you guessed it, on a vertical one, the gypsy here is simply just turned 90 degrees. We're drifting dangerously close to what might be described as a semi-religious topic here, because there are people that have strong opinions pro-horizontal windlasses and there are people that have strong opinions pro-vertical windlasses. I think as long as you stick with a reputable brand and a model that doesn't have a ton of really pissed off people in forums complaining about various issues, then you're going to be fine no matter if you choose a horizontal or a vertical version. So I can't really tell you which type to go with, but I can tell you that, for instance, the Tigris has a great reputation. It's what Athena came with. There was an old 12 volt version installed. It worked fine after 30 years, but it did have some corrosion underneath here from combining stainless and aluminum. There are a few things I don't like about the Tigris, and that's the fact that it does not come with a sensor for a chain counter. That's an optional extra you have to buy. And then you're going to be bolting this to the outside of the windlass and drilling a small hole in the gypsy to place a little magnet in there. It's kind of wonky. We'll get back to this chain counter sensor kit and the installation of it when our wireless remote shows up, but yeah, I am not a big fan of this. The other thing I don't really love about the Tigris is the fact that it is aluminum. On the one hand, that makes it more affordable, but it also means you are going to have corrosion issues where it gets bolted through the deck with stainless steel fasteners. The old one did have some pretty big chunks missing out of the bottom of it. But yeah, it was usable after 30 years, so maybe it's not the end of the world. And if they did offer a bronze or stainless version, I'm sure that would be crazy expensive. In terms of installing the windlass, one thing I really like is the fact that this box comes with a 1-to-1 template. These measurements are also available on Lowfriends' website, and I use those to have a stainless steel backing plate laser cut. Figuring out where and how to install the windlass is pretty straightforward. Now, according to the manual, you need to make sure that the chain comes in at or below 90 degrees. And as you can see, that is the case here. So I don't need any kind of space spacer underneath the windlass. The windlass also needs to sit nice and flat on the deck. It shouldn't be able to rock. Now you might be able to see the old holes from the old windlass up here. When I rebuilt the deck, I think I must have put in a little bit more curve to this section. But back here where the windlass is now, it's just flat enough that it doesn't rock. I'm happy with the way this lines up, and moving the windlass aft about 15 centimeters is perfectly fine. I've got plenty of room in the chain locker. I used the backing plate as a template for the holes I need to drill. I also used the backing plate along with a flustering bit on my router for the bigger holes. Then it was on to sealing the holes. The big holes get a smear with epoxy and a gloved finger. The smaller holes get filled with thickened epoxy. In between coats of unthickened epoxy to seal the larger holes, I decided to install the tracks for the head sail. I got the first track almost fully installed before I realized that one of the bolts was too short. So yeah, I've had to remove the track again and order longer bolts. That is very frustrating. So now I'm gonna have to wait a couple of days for the longer bolts to show up, and I've wasted about 2 hours fiddling around with this thing. That is annoying. Let me just get the last bit of cleanup out of the way here, and then we can head up to the workshop and take a look at the arch. I've already put in a little bit of time this week working on the feet of the arch. They went from looking like this to now looking like this. They look pretty dang spiffy. Last week I ordered these belts, but they turned out to be kind of self-destructing, so yeah, you'll see that in a little bit. But this week, these showed up. These are gonna be the bee's knees. If I can just make these belts last long enough to sand all of the welds, then I should be good to go. But yeah, using these is no fun when you know they're gonna explode any second. Yep, there we go. Just absolutely torn to smithereens. After a few hours of polishing, I've got a section here that looks really good. So smooth and shiny. Unfortunately, it turns out that the red belt, which is the medium grit one, is back ordered. They only sent me one. I ordered 10. That is really annoying because that means I can't move on to the finer one, which I've got 10 of those, but yeah, they're absolutely worthless without the medium grit ones. The next morning, I again used the backing plate as a template and drilled the correct size holes through the thickened epoxy. I then double and triple checked the size of the bolts I was planning on using to not have a repeat of the track situation. After a thorough application of butyl tape, including around the center of the windlass, which is where the cables are run through to attach to the motor, I smushed the chunky monkey in place. With the help of a wrench up top, I secured the bolts so I could turn the nuts down below in the comfort of the chain locker. And just like that, Athena yet again has a windlass installed. Unfortunately, the wireless chain counter and remote that I've ordered is back ordered, and it won't be back in stock until week 22, which is in a little over a week. So while the windlass is installed, it's not hooked up to anything yet, and we'll have to wait a couple of weeks to do that. After the success of installing the windlass, I decided to punish myself by doing a little bit of tidying up aboard the boat. And after that, I was still feeling in the mood for more punishment, so I headed up to the workshop to do a little bit of oh glorious polishing. I'm now a little bit over halfway done polishing the arch. Martin then helped me machine a part for the itty bitty Perkins generator. It is a spacer of sorts that's going to go in between the flywheel and the Bovix coupling. With that in hand, I'm now very close to being able to assemble the itty bitty Perkins generator. All I need are a few more bolts, a seal, and a taper lock. So yeah, hopefully we'll get back to the itty bitty Perkins generator in a couple of weeks. Said itty bitty Perkins is only going to be one way we can transform dinosaur squeezings into electricity. The other way is here. That is the high output alternator I mentioned a little earlier in the video. This is going to be a super spiffy setup. The alternator is controlled by this external regulator, which I believe is very similar to a wake speed controller, but this guy has a few additional features. And this guy will also talk to the BMS, or the battery management system. The BMS protects the lithium cells, but but the BMS also has the power to suddenly cut the connection to the battery. And in case that happens while the alternator is charging, that can damage the alternator. But that's where this little external regulator comes into the picture, because this will let the alternator know to stop charging before the BMS decides to cut that connection. But this little guy would let us do other cool stuff, like for instance RPM dependent load, meaning we can tell the alternator how much load to put on the engine based on the RPM of the engine. But yeah, this guy has a lot of cool tricks. I purchased all of this stuff from a US-based company called Ocean Planet Energy. The owner, Bruce, besides seeming like the nicest guy in the world, was also the first American to finish the Vendée Globe. Goal for now is just to make sure that the alternator and the custom pulley kit fits on the Volvo engine, because before I wire any of this up, I want to have Ocean Planet Energy go over my proposed wiring diagram just to make absolutely sure I don't make any stupid yet catastrophic mistakes, because just because it's DC, it does not mean you have to be careful, and it's always worth it just to get a little bit of input, especially from some experts. These two needs to be mounted on the engine. One has 3 holes, the other has 4 holes. And when you look at it, 3 holes, 4 holes. That is my kind of puzzle. But let's start by removing the old alternator and the belt here, so we've got a little bit of room to work with. Aha! Success! In this corner, we've got the stock alternator from Volvo Penta. It is 115 amps at 12 volts. And then over here, we've got the spiffy new one, 185 amps at 24 volts. Why bother switching these two out? They look very similar. Well, it's always easiest to compare apples to apples. So if we convert the output numbers to watts, the Volvo Penta will output roughly 1300 watts, whereas the new spiffy one will output somewhere right around 4400 watts. The saddle on these two alternators are different. This one is about 16 millimeters wider. I think there was supposed to be an adapter included with the custom pulley kit, but I couldn't find that in the box. Fortunately, it looks like it's an easy part to replace. It looks like you just unbolt these 2 bolts and remove this doohickey. Well, it kind of looks like Athena is ready to start racing now. There are 2 questions I'm going to ask Ocean Planet Energy. One is the saddle adapter doohickey, and then also the alignment of the belt. With the custom pulley kit in place, it seems like the belt would be out here. And this thing was included, but there's no recess in this or anything that would kind of allow it to be lined up out here. So yeah, maybe I'm missing something else. We'll see. While I was emailing back and forth with Bruce, I headed up to the workshop to do yet more glorious polishing. I managed to do another quarter of the arch, so there's only 1 quarter left now. So with a little bit of luck, I should be able to finish the arch this week. It's now quite a bit later in the day, but the epoxy and the fiberglass I ordered for the shower pan showed up. So why don't we go ahead and finish the back of this thing. As you can see, there's no peel ply on here, so I have to do a little bit of surface prep. And there's nothing better than grinding fiberglass right before bedtime. That way you're sure to maximize the itchiness. That is going to be perfectly fine for the bottom of a shower pan. Let's mix up a little bit of thick epoxy just to fill these voids. I'm not going to be laying up a bunch of glass here because there's already glass on the back of this foam from a previous project. So I just want to tie the pieces together and make sure that everything is nice and sealed. It is getting a little bit late in the day, but it would be really nice to finish laying up glass on the back today, because that way I can finish the front tomorrow and then the shower pan will be completely done. So this is the first layer. This is the second layer of fiberglass. This is going to be a nice sturdy shower pan. You might be wondering what's going to take up the void between the shower pan and the cabin sole. The plan is to use the same foaming epoxy I used in the rudder. I figure if it's good enough for the rudder, it's certainly good enough for the shower. And this is the fourth and final layer on the back. And there she is, all nice and done and covered in peel ply. And it's now completely dark outside. I am gonna rush up and grab a shower before going straight to bed, and then tomorrow morning I think I'm gonna head up to the workshop and work on Athena's new pulpit with Martin. Next day at the workshop, I started by cutting some pipe. The new pulpit is going to be more beefy and rugged looking than the old one, but it'll have roughly the same dimensions. The pulpit is made out of 33 and 26 millimeter stainless pipe with a wall thickness of 2 millimeters. While I was cutting, Martin got started welding. The plan was to finish the 2 outer pipes before attempting to work out all the details. There needs to be a couple of holes to allow power to the nav light and some cables for a forward-facing camera to run inside of the pipes. We got everything lined up so it looked roughly right and tagged together. To get the measurements absolutely perfect, we had to bring the pulpit down to the boat to do a quick test fit. We took the measurements from our test fit and transferred those to a giant piece of MDF and used that to line up the stainless end caps. That's what will serve as the feet or the attachment points for the pulpit. A little bit of machining was required to get the pipes to fit neatly together. After that, everything just lined up perfectly. It's starting to look pretty dang spiffy, if I do say so myself. Martin proceeded to finish all of the welding. And here it is, Athena's new pulpit. It came out way better than I had hoped for. The new pulpit is quite a bit stronger and beefier looking than the old one. It also has a slightly different look to it that I think will go really well with the fiberglass dodger and also the arch. Don't get fooled by the fact that the old one looks a little bit higher than the new one. It's just because it's sitting on top of these threaded rods down here. But yeah, the old one always felt super flimsy to me, and it also sustained some damage before I purchased Athena. So rather than repairing the old one, I figured now would be a good time to just replace it with a new, much beefier version. A neat little detail down there in the stainless end cap is that we have the same way of leading cables into the boat through the deck hull joint with those little flared pieces of pipe. The attachment points on the old arch were hollow to allow cables to come into the boat that way, but that means these are very weak. Meanwhile, there is nothing weak about this guy. Super sturdy. Now, there are still a few things I need to do here. I need to weld on a little attachment doohickey here for a nav light and also a forward-facing camera and some little loops back here for the lifelines. But other than that, this guy is ready for polishing. There's also a little bit more work to be done on the arch once I'm done polishing it. There's going to be a third arch that attaches or pivots here on the 2 stainless end caps, allowing us to fold it down this way. We're going to use that for lowering and raising a dinghy instead of just traditional davits. We also need to weld on a little bit of angle up here for securing the solar panels and some attachment points for the antennas, but other than that, it's just polishing. I saw a few comments on last week's video saying that I should have splurged on pipes with a better surface finish rather than doing all of this polishing myself. And I wholeheartedly agree. Polishing sucks. But it was never really my plan to polish all of this. The original plan was to have it glass blasted and just passivated, and that was it. But then I made this stupid mistake of just polishing a small little piece just to see what it would look like. And it's kind of like pulling the thread in a shredder. Just don't do it. But well, at least I'm making good progress on the polishing. Tonight is Saturday night, and I'm gonna end this week's video tonight, even though it's only Saturday, just so that I can dedicate tomorrow, Sunday, for just polishing. I don't really feel like shooting more video about polishing. I just want to get it done. It looks like next week is gonna be just a bunch of rain again, so I'm gonna have to focus on projects on the inside of the boat, but this box should contain everything I need to plumb in the head. Also, I have ordered the seal I need for the itty bitty Perkins, and with the king of all spacers here done, all I need is just a few bolts to be able to just bolt all of this together, and then we should be able to make some progress on the itty bitty Perkins again. The high output alternator situation is not figured out yet. I hope we'll figure something out next week, but no matter what that is, I'm sure I won't be able to install it next week because either I'm going to be waiting for a new alternator or some kind of adapter to show up, or God forbid, I'm going to have to make some kind of adapter myself. I don't want to do that because that was not really on my to-do list, and I've got tons of other stuff to do. Ava shows up in 41 days, and I would really like to have all of the major stuff done by then. So yeah, time is short. I guess the silver lining there is that there's no shortage of stuff to work on, so I hope all of you guys will join me next week aboard Athena for yet more DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like. See you!